Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever it is in the world that you are. Welcome to Anti-Stall Racing. We are here for the media day of our Indycar series, and again, we have a mega one lined up for you. You might recognize the track if you watched the last media day. It is indeed the same track that we were at last time, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, and it is again going to be a half-hour race session. The cars, though, very much different from what we had. We had the LMP2s and GT3s last time out. Now we have those glorious Dallara IR18s out on track. I am one of your commentators, Ava, joined by the ever-lovely Gerard. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, but you caught me just as I was mid-sip of drink then. That was amusing. Yeah. No, I'm good. Yeah, we've all spent a very long time working on these new lovely graphics and all the streaming resources and getting these series together. So, yeah, I'm really hoping everything goes well today. But it is just a test run, so if anything does go wrong, we really do apologise. But I'm sure it'll be great, and the racing's going to be amazing as well, just as it was the other night. So we do have a quick grid here. So the practice session they just went through did set the grid for the race. So if you want to take us through that there.
Yeah, absolutely. So on pole, a name that I don't think needs much introduction. Hakon Krevstad does an amazing job in anything he races in. Does put it on pole with a 109.8. Followed off by Kevin Birrell, who was 1/10 off, with Doriano there in P3, 2/10 off what Hakon was able to do. Very close qualifying as well, as what you might notice, as Kevin Stam is P4 there again, just shy of 3/10 off. Then we move back into P5 and P6, Danilo and Paolo respectively, with Leon there in P7, Benoit in P8, Hannes in P9, and Brody will round out your top 10. Only 7/10 separating the top 10, so very close qualifying. Frankie Francisca in P11 with Kevin Simian there in P12. Aiden Young and Liam Kerr next up in P13 and P14. And then Zachary and Alex there, P15 and P16. Andy Tapman there in 17th with Carlos Fernandez in P18th. Johan there in P19 with Matteo in P20. Silviu there in P21 and then Bart there in P22. We'll round out our grid. So again, it looked like it was a relatively close qualifying, I should say, as I try and get my words together. But hey, it is looking like this grid is a special one, and I don't know about you, but these Dallara IR18 cars just look special, don't they?
Yeah, they are absolutely beautiful, so like streamlined and arrow-headed. I actually prefer them to the F1 cars when they're racing. I think they look much better.
Hot take.
Yeah, it's probably a bit controversial, that one, but let us know in the chat what you think of the look of these cars in comparison to other open wheel racing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I very much prefer the look of this, at least compared to more modern F1 cars, I think. Looking back through the eras, the 2004 F1 cars were iconic. I don't think anything would look much better than that, in my personal opinion. But yeah, these IR18 cars have a lot of downforce considering the type of car they are. Obviously, it's open wheel, they're going to have a lot of downforce anyway. But they do produce some stellar amounts, considering the fact that when you look at the front end, at least in comparison to a lot of other open wheeler series, there's not really much going on. You look at the rear wing, it's quite narrow, kind of simple to be honest, and the front wing, again, very similar thing. Like, it'll extend just to the wheel arches, but not much further than that, and there's not much complexity going on, and yet, even still, the speeds these cars can produce is incredible. Watching them on both road courses and also the ovals, these cars are ridiculous. Their speed is just unmatched when it comes to oval racing. They have new aero kits designed specifically for it, so that obviously helps. But, yeah, I mean, it is just, these cars they've got something about them. There's just something nice about that motor that they've got sitting right behind the driver's head, actually. So I imagine if you're a driver of one of these cars, you've very much got earplugs in the entire time. But the other thing I wanted to talk about as well, just running through sort of what the format is for today as we're finishing up, or at least getting to about the halfway point of this pace lap, is that we will have a 30-minute race, and as far as I could see, it's also a mandatory tire change. So these guys are going to be switching between, I believe it's the primes and the alternates, I think is the way that they call them.
Yep, that's right.
In IndyCar. So, yeah. And then even still, I believe they will still have their 10 push-to-pass uses, which, by the way, I found out, was something I didn't know. The push-to-pass is, if you drop below 100% throttle, the push-to-pass will end before the 20-second timer, which is something maybe that these drivers will keep in mind, probably just using it out of the final corner, as we see the safety car is pulling in there. And these drivers will be led away by Hakon. And it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers do on the first opening lap. These cold tyres, not very friendly to the F1 cars that we know and love, and Hakon does indeed go out of the final corner, gets a really nice jump actually ahead of the cars behind him. So that's Hakon, Kevin, Doriano, then Kevin again in P4, all trying to battle for the same piece of tarmac. Let's see who makes it first into T1. Looks like everyone is slowing themselves down for T1, as there was a couple of drivers going a bit deeper further back, but everyone making it through quite nicely so far. Very much goes into single file very quickly through the first sector of this, I mean, Indy road course, as we see everyone trying to use as much track as possible on the outside. It's they won't get off track for doing it, as there's a couple of cars get there off in the background. That's Andy Tapman, and we'll see just exactly what happened here. So this is Andy Tapman, and I don't know if anyone else is involved. We'll have to wait and see, but there looks to be, look, there was another incident further up. That's a car losing their front wing, so Andy Tapman, does he just lose it on the exit of the corner? Someone else already has. So we'll see if that's anything to go by. Someone tries to go up the inside, and there's going to be contact. There it is. So someone losing it under braking tries to go for a little bit of a desperate move, if you want to call it anything, and then straight back to it, as we are now on board with Doriano, who now all of a sudden is in the lead of this race. I don't know what happened, but again, very close between all of them, all the drivers, at least seemingly to be quite respectful. I don't know whether or not we have a replay of what happened to Hakon to lose 3 positions like he did, whether or not it was just an overtake that got happened and then one thing led to another, but yeah, back into P4 now is Hakon, chasing down Kevin Stam. We're going to see whether or not he's going to be able to do it here up the inside. He looks for the move. He is going to send it. That is a very late move. And then Kevin, very much knowing that he's going to send it, does well to avoid. So Hakon very much trying to make up for maybe a little bit of an intimidation factor. Just tries to send it where there's probably not much room, but he made it work, so credit to him. Hakon now back up to P3 after maybe a little mistake that he made, and Kevin now has to try and hold off the best he can from a hard-charging Paolo. Going down the straight, we're going to see a lot of cars here diving into the inside. Have to be aware as well, push to pass is in effect, so potentially, we'll see a couple of these drivers try using it to maybe try and make their way further up the field. But at the moment, it doesn't look like much else is doing. I believe Paolo is very much able to hold this position, but maybe not as quick as Kevin through the first sector. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not that changes throughout the series.
Well, yeah.
But Hakon already onto the back end.
What I have noticed is, I mean, I'm probably going to speak too soon now, seeing how it's panning out, but Doriano appears to be way later on the brakes than anyone else. Actually, let's look on the gearbox, and we'll see how much later on the brakes he is in the harder braking corners, because in turn 1, on the last lap, I just saw him disappear in the braking zone.
Okay. We'll have to wait and see then. Is Doriano as late into the brakes as we initially think he is? I guess we'll find out here into what will be turn 1. I believe, though, we're going to see whether or not Kevin is going to try and go up the inside. He definitely does. Ooh. And, I believe there was also a little bit of rack avoidance, a little bit under the throttle, and that is it. that is a spinner. Catch the grass and there's no way of recovering. That is... Oh, I have to admit, that is a bit of a gutting situation.
Looks like struggling to get back off the grass as well.
Yeah, these grass, obviously, since we had the whole, well, I believe we've already mentioned it quite a few times already. Don't need to mention it much more.
Something else is going on here. Was that a pass by Kevin? That was a pass by Kevin P2 on Hakon. Hakon had an issue there. I think he ran wide.
So again, Hakon, a driver that normally, as he goes all the way onto the grass there on exit, and now Paolo's going to try and look up. Hakon's inside, maybe into the next couple of corners, and again, who's that trying to take the slip road there? I believe that's Kevin. No, that's a back marker, I believe, who just got out of the way there of this battle for P2. But yeah, I'm noticing that Hakon is making quite a few mistakes here in this car, and you would say, sort of with the experience that Hakon has, at least within the league, that maybe, you know, you wouldn't think he has as many mistakes as he's showing today. Obviously, could be nerves, could be the fact that he's got this new car and maybe he hasn't driven the Dallara as much, but a driver that I'm sure we'll see when the season actually gets underway and going again, he's going to be battling it out there for top 3 almost every race. But again, it's looking like if this is what the actual pace is going to be of all the drivers so far, then I reckon we're going to have a pretty good fight here for the top at least 5, maybe even 6 drivers. Obviously, we've already had the likes of Doriano has now gone into the pits and taking a very long time to change his tyres. Maybe he's just out of the session and he's just going to call it a day. But I believe we may see a 6-way fight for the championship if things go well, which is very exciting times, you know, as much as the media day is for us to get back together and make sure everything's all good, as Hakon does go early into the pit lane there. Obviously, we did say there is a compound change needing to be done, so maybe just getting off those alternates, get onto the primes and try and set the fastest lap times you possibly can for the rest of the race.
Also appears that we may only have 16 drivers remaining, I think. It looks like the rest are either sit at the pits repairing or have dropped out. 4 of them have definitely dropped out. They've got out the car. Someone else has crashed. Oh, wow, big crash. Let's take a look at this.
So here we go. Exit of the final corner.
Speed it to full speed for you. Sorry about that.
So is this going into T1, we'd imagine?
Certainly appears it.
So gets on the brakes nice and early, and unfortunately just locks the rears and nowhere to go. And that's now an Indycar baby being made. That's how that works.
Lovely.
That's if you ever wondered how the smaller series of cars get made, now you know. But I will say, these cars, we mentioned it before, I'm pretty sure someone put it up in the YouTube chat, of how these cars, even though they're quite aero dependent, still provide such close racing. As we see, Leon is using his push to pass, by the way. Just to inform you, he was using his push to pass on the straights. Has 7, whereas the cars around him, just for those of you keeping a note of your push to pass bingo, the rest of the cars around him, 8 uses left, 9 uses left, and 10 uses left. So Andy, who is on our screens at the moment, has used none of his push to passes.
There you go.
Kevin, the top 2 have used... Yeah, it's up on the screen. So Kevin and... Kevin. Thanks, Kevin's. Bill and Stan have used 2 and 1, respectively. So it'll be interesting to see how the push-to-pass strategy plays out, obviously, in the road course races, with our first one, I'm pretty sure, being at the same course again.
Yes, it should be at Indianapolis.
It is a 60-lap race, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it's something around that. Yeah, I believe it's something around that. I'll just mention as well on that push-to-pass note, push-to-pass is also not allowed during oval races because of the dangers involved, so we won't be seeing push-to-pass in the oval races in this series, which there are a few of, actually. There are a few oval races that we're going to be having.
So, do you have the calendar up out of curiosity?
I can
to see whether or not we can get that out for the viewers. But while you're busy doing that, we will see what else is going on track. And right now, it looks as though everyone is just making sure they can practice their pit stops, make sure they know what's going on. Maybe even a few people using the time to cheekily test, you know, how much is it going to be if I need to change tyres, add fuel, you know, what are the different pit strategies looking like, so that when we get to the actual race, maybe it changes a little, and we see the likes of, you know, Kevin Stan being like, right, I know it takes 8.7 seconds for the stop I just did, which I believe was a change of tyres and maybe even a little bit of a splash of fuel as well. If I need to, I can now use that to work out, right, how much am I going to be, you know, how long am I going to be in the pit lane for, and what's the deficit like? So if it comes down to a pit lane strategy battle, you know, can I get out ahead of this traffic, or will I be in the middle of it when I go to pit, and can I extend the gap? There's also something else worth considering on the road course side of it. Obviously, on oval, it's way, way harder to judge. The speeds are much greater, so naturally, you're on the ovals. I think your pit strategy is just sort of, I'm gonna try and do the least amount as I can and run until the tires explode. Basically, you know, do a Lightning McQueen. Or maybe don't miss it on tires.
I very crudely just added the calendar onto the live stream for you guys, just so you get an idea of what's going to be going on. So, next week, the 19th, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we are right now, road course. 60 laps, you were correct, yes.
Nice.
Week after is Texas Motor Speedway, 130 laps. I believe that is an oval, Texas Motor Speedway is. Straight after that, 2 weeks of absolutely intense racing with Long Beach and Belle Isle on the 3rd and then the 10th, which is going to be absolutely brutal. And then on the 17th of October, we come back here onto Indianapolis Oval, which obviously is legendary in these cars. 120 laps of that, so not quite the Indy 500, but certainly a distance.
Close enough.
And straight after that, Barber Motorsports Park. Obviously, IndyCars do race Barber. I don't actually know the track myself, so that's going to be really interesting for me to learn that one. Then Iowa Speedway on the 31st. Ooh, that's Halloween. Yeah,
Are we going to get a spooky race? Yeah. Are we going to say that everyone has to run a Halloween-themed livery?
I mean, I think Halloween-themed liveries for that one would be absolutely fantastic.
For just some special Halloween, you know, one-off liveries for Iowa Speedway.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Have that for the entire week. So the week of that race, right, we have the IndyCar Series Halloween-themed liveries, the Touring Car Halloween-themed liveries, and then the IMSA race that happens during that week, also Halloween liveries. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be absolutely incredible. And then go back to it, the week after, 7th of November, my personal favourite track is Watkins Glen. 40 laps of it. Beautiful in the IndyCar, beautiful in any car, to be honest, but that's just my personal opinion because I would live at that track if I could. Then the 14th of November is Pocono, or however you pronounce it. I always get it wrong. So I apologise. Yeah, that's the one.
The not quite oval.
Yeah, absolutely. 100 laps of that, so it's quite a distance, and I believe it's particularly slippy in these cars. I can't quite remember it, but I remember racing NASCAR around there, and it was a pain in the ass. And then the 21st of November, finishing the season, is Road America. So a very classic track, typically racing GT3s. It'd be interesting to see Indy cars around it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's your calendar for the IndyCar series moving forward, and I mean, you've already mentioned it. There's quite a few good tracks I'm very excited to see. Also, something I am excited to see is more on-track action, as indeed we have Kevin Burrell currently battling with Johan, and we're going to see whether or not Kevin can make a pass there on the DHL car, and that was a little bit of a mistake on the braking, locked it up, and the mistake was made. Kevin found the space, and there it is.
But I wouldn't be complaining if I was Mr. Johan Roussel right now, because he's up 16 places from the start. I would not be complaining at all.
you keep it on track, and that's what can happen. Admittedly, you maybe don't want to miss the turning for the road course.
Yeah, that's very true.
We're trying to prep early for the Indy, our version of the Indy 500. That's what he was doing there.
Saying that, it's not quite as bad as it used to be, I don't think. The old road course was like a maze labyrinth in comparison to this. Ooh, look at this close racing right here.
Håkon Grebstad goes up the inside there and makes that move look relatively easy, but I'm sure Zachary wasn't having much... I'm pretty sure he wasn't just giving it to Håkon. I think there was a little bit of a fight there. But Håkon, we know how quick he is, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not Håkon can recover from whatever it was Håkon was doing in the pit lane, because it seems like he was in there for an awfully long time. I don't know if he was repairing damage or what, but he was in there for almost 2.5 minutes. So again, similar sort of timing to what Zachary was in the pits for, so maybe sustained some damage, and that's why he dropped the couple of positions he did early on. But again, Zachary is at least trying to keep on to the back of these guys, and I'm not sure who that is in the number 22 car, but he's being definitely hounded by Håkon, and just as I mentioned, people doing well, they tend to spin, unfortunately.
Yeah, I saw it flash up red on my telemetry and thinking, oh, he's there.
Yeah, my commentator's curse sticks pretty firm.
Yeah, I think you've cursed more people than the rest of us now, and you've been here for the least amount of time out of all of us.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you're on a good run at the minute.
Well, hey, look, you need the drama, right? We need the drama in the league, so why not make it happen? Look, I'm not saying that this cursing thing has been like an ongoing thing for a while, but it kind of has. All I'm going to say is we need to be careful who I'm spectating.
Very true, very true.
If you don't want me to curse any drivers, then sit in the middle of the field and do a Carlos Sainz. That's kind of the best example I can give, Just do your race, and provided I don't start saying, oh, that person's done really well, then you should be all good. But on board here with a lovely T-cam shot. I definitely do love this camera as we see Paulo Lopez working that wheel. Very smooth, actually, on this twists and turns of the Indianapolis road course. It's not necessarily a course that you would think of as too complex, but some corners definitely jump out at you, like this one here. Very hard to spot your braking point, and depending on how you came out that corner before, it's very hard to actually brake for it as well. You could be braking while turning, and that's something that's not necessarily easy to do, as Paulo, out of the final corner, does put on that push to pass. You can tell due to the green little box there on his steering wheel, as well as the flashing green lights on either side of the rev counter, telling him that he does indeed have that extra boost of power. And something that, again, one thing that us as commentators are going to try and keep an eye on throughout the season is how that push to pass battle works, because it is one that I think it's almost like playing a game of chess while driving. You're very much seeing if you can track what your opponents are doing and trying to match them the best you can, and if you see them starting to pull away, do you use that push to pass to try and catch up, or do you save it and potentially have it in case you need to defend from them if your pit stop was much better?
So we got some pit starting. Yeah, I was about to say, nice segue right there. Andy's pitting. He was in P2 to start, as in P2 when he pitted. He's already dropped back to P3, now P4.
I would imagine he's going to come out P5, depending on how long his pit stop is.
Well,
I believe Alex Richardson should overtake him, but I cannot imagine Bart, who is a lap down, well, near enough a lap down from all these guys.
Pit lane time is about 57 seconds, and he's now on his way out, so he's going to have a good pit lane time.
But keep in mind that the pit lane time, obviously, is not how much time you lose overall, so you've got to take that into account when you're looking at the gaps. So
58
you might see
seconds.
the gap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a relatively quick pit lane time, but I think it's almost difficult to say that is exactly how much time he lost. Obviously the pit time is a relative of how much he lost in terms of he was stationary for that long. But keep in mind that when you're in the pit lane, obviously you are traveling. You're not stopped until you hit your box, so you don't lose as much time as they might let you believe.
He was also on the alternate strategy there as well, because he started on the harder tyres and then switched to the red stripe, which means he does have a better tyre compound for the end of the race, whereas the top 4 currently, one of which just went in, were on the harder tyres.
Alex then is going to be pitting for the alternates then.
Yeah, I imagine so too. Wonder if that's a reaction to Andy there.
Potentially. I mean, I can't see him coming out ahead.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not, no.
I mean, both the Kevins and Leon, the top 3 that is, all pitted on lap 8, lap 7, and lap 7. You know what, let's bring it up on the screen for everybody to see for a moment. There you go, that is the lap that everybody's pitted on. Which means that if Andy puts his foot down with those extra grippy tyres, he might catch some time. He's only 26 seconds behind Leon, and he is gaining as well.
Here is some interesting things to note, is the lap times that Aiden has just done, Aiden Young, who is currently in P6. He is on the alternate red stripe tyres. He pit on lap 12, so he's already gone through the bedding in process. He's already got those tyres nice and up to temperature, and he is flying right now. He did, before the lap just gone, he did the fastest lap of the race with a 1:11.9, and then did a 1:12.4, so he is faster than the front 3, but not by as much as you'd probably want to imagine it would be. Like, it's not like in F1, for example, the difference between the softs and mediums is at least a good couple of seconds. Here it's looking like it's half a second, maybe. So that is going to be one thing to note, is are the tyre compounds actually as much different as we would imagine that they are? Obviously, if you're used to open wheel racing and you're used to the likes of F1, then naturally when you hear about a tyre change, you're thinking, right, you know, if they go to a softer compound tyres, that's going to give them at least a second worth of advantage. When in IndyCar, I don't actually think it's that much in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, you still want to be on those grippier tyres because, you know, you can have more confidence, you can send it harder every lap, as opposed to if you're on the harder, if you're on the harder one, you've got to sort of brake a little bit earlier. You're not necessarily getting the max performance that you can. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the times develop and to see whether or not those lap times that Kevin is doing. As we do jump back on board here with Brody, we'll see what happened here. I believe this is just going into the second infield section, so sector 2.
Oh,
turns in, hits
bounce.
the curbs, and
yeah,
these cars don't really like curbs. It's one thing I'm noticing. They're not a fan of you clattering over curbs. You can obviously set up the car suspension to be a little bit more compliant with them, but if you take as much curb as he did and get on 2 wheels, you will find yourself spinning very, very quickly. But I will say, Andy and Alex both right now setting fastest lap times for themselves, as Bart there misses the corner and does a little bit of a burnout as well.
Too much.
Fine, he's just, you know, he's just doing donuts a little bit early.
Yeah, 7 minutes too early.
Yeah. Well, you know, someone's got to do them, right? It wouldn't be an IndyCar race without someone doing a bit of a donut near the end. And correct me if I'm wrong as well. I'm not sure how much you know about these IndyCars, but do they? I'm pretty sure they do not have TC, right?
Nope. No,
these
they don't have
cars
traction. No traction control, no ABS. And
so
no power
it's
steering.
All on you as a driver. Yeah. The no power steering is one I always thought was very interesting. I can't really understand the decision, but a lot of drivers who race the series seem to like it.
Yep.
And So yeah, it's
Feels a lot more raw than F1. F1, you kind of feel a bit glued to the track. Feel a bit like you're on rails sometimes. But IndyCar, they're a bit more twitchy, a bit more, in my opinion, fun.
Here's an interesting note as well about the IndyCar, in case those of you who are wondering. I am just looking at some of the statistics for it. The actual minimum weight for the cars at ovals, specifically the 1.5 mile speedways and Indy, actually the car is a lot lighter when it runs at those circuits as a comparison to where it runs at road, street courses and the shorter ovals. I'd imagine a lot of that has to do with the bodywork. You're only taking a look at sort of 14 kilos or so, so that's probably where a lot of that is coming from.
Yeah,
obviously,
well,
the bodywork changes a lot.
Yeah, the rear wing especially changes. You'll see that in the oval spec, they barely have a rear wing. It is just like a flat bar across the back.
It gives enough downforce, but maybe not as much as you would imagine. So, if it's your first time driving one of these cars on an oval, have to be a little bit careful when you go into the corners. You try turning in a little bit too aggressively and the car will spin on you. So that's always something that's a nice balancing change that you can do. The other thing as well is these cars have the ability to change the anti-roll bar during the race.
Yep, front and back.
Which is something you don't have in F1. Obviously in F1 you can change things like the differential and you can change things like your ERS deploys and all the other fancy stuff. But here in the IndyCar, it's just, if you want to make it tighter, make it tighter. If you want to make it looser, make it looser. You know, that's sort of, that's the American way to do things.
And it's all mechanical as well.
It says on the tin.
All mechanical as well. So inside the cockpit, you have two levers. You know what? Let's go cockpit view. We can actually see them, I believe. Yeah, you can see a little ring. There we go. By his right hand. When he steers to the right, you'll see it. And there's another one probably behind the graphic on his left. There you go, little ring right there. That is your anti-roll bar control.
So it's interesting stuff that I think matters more in ovals than it does in road courses, but it's still nice to have. You know, if you feel like the car's maybe a bit more understeery, then it is something that a lot of these more experienced drivers will maybe try and use, the drivers who have that sort of setup knowledge. It's something that maybe they'll try and use to get the car to grip a bit more and bite a bit more. If they find that the car is understeering, then they might try and sort of either loosen the fronts and maybe see if they can just get it to roll into the corner a bit more, or they'll try something a bit different and just see what can happen. And the other thing as well is obviously the push pass we talk about. I believe the power figures at base is around about 550 horsepower.
Yeah, something around that.
And then I'm not sure if the push to pass gives them, I believe it ups the turbo pressure if I'm not mistaken. That I'll have to fact check myself on, but it definitely gives them a nice boost. I believe the maximum amount of power we see these cars have is around about 700 horsepower, which is probably what you'll see more so on the ovals than on the road courses. It's probably a little bit too much on these small little road courses with no TC and ABS. And one thing we will see is obviously without the power steering, these guys at circuits like Long Beach specifically, their arms are going to be pretty tired after this, you'd imagine.
Yes. Another really interesting setting they have that is always the really confusing one is on oval courses, they don't have them on road courses, but on oval courses, they have something called a weight jacker, which is a spring in the right rear suspension, which essentially simulates adding or reducing the amount of weight on that rear right tyre. So physically what it does is it raises or lowers the suspension in that rear right, making the car looser or tighter, as it's going around the oval. And the reason it does it on the rear right is because it can point the rear wing more into the air or less into the air while you're going around an oval. So, interesting bit of the way Jacker is. I recommend watching a few videos on it because it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the cars, they have so much going on, but when you break it down into what it is, a lot of it is just mechanical. Like, they don't have much in the way of fancy electronics like the boys over at F1 would probably have, you know? So, as you mentioned before, it has that much rawer feel, doesn't it? It's the driving experience of driving one of these cars is very much... You're driving the car as opposed to the car driving you. I believe people keep saying, obviously, like the F1, for example, always on rails is like what it feels like, you know? You've got the F1 cars have so much grip that you can sort of just turn into a lot of these corners and just not really have to think about it. You just sort of turn in and the car's like, either it's completely fine with it, or the back end will slip out, and it's one of those two things. In the Indycar, I feel like you can play with it a little bit more. You can play with it on the edge, and it's not as reactive. Obviously, it still wants to be driven in that open-wheeler type of way of you still want to send it into the corners and make sure that when you're doing it, you're being smooth, but I feel like you can be a bit less aggressive, and obviously without the aids of power steering, you feel more as well, I believe, as a driver. You'll feel like every bump, and when the car is trying to get looser on you, you'll actually, the steering will tug you in the other direction.
Yeah, you won't feel it.
Aggressively as well.
You won't feel it. The steering will get ripped out of your hands.
If you want to simulate what it's like to drive an IndyCar with no power steering, try and find someone who has a direct drive wheel, crank that up to the max, and then take an IndyCar around like Indianapolis or Sebring. Sebring is another one where you'd probably find your arms are going to fall off. But that is race over. And Kevin, is he going to start doing some donuts? He did win the race. And that is Kevin Stam finishing in P2. I have to wait and see where Leon comes out. He's just rounding out the final corner now. And is that Kevin doing some donuts there in the foreground? Can't really see it. You have to wait and see if Leon joins him. No one's doing donuts, but they are all lining up together, so that's always nice to see at the end of a media day. And that is Andy Tapman finishing there in P4. And Brody will finish out the rest of those who did indeed finish the race in P11. The entire rundown of your grid being Kevin Birrell for the win. As, jeez, Brody decides to test the new iRacing damage model. So that's Kevin Birrell did end up winning the media day race here with Kevin Stam in P2. Leon there in P3 with Andy Tapman P4. Alex Richardson in P5 with Aidan Young P6. Hakon Grebstad there deciding to be taken out near the end, I believe. Oh no, sorry, that was Kevin being taken out there near the end. But Hakon Grebstad was in P7. Zachary there in P8. Carlos Fernandez P9. Mateo rounds out your top 10 with Brody P11. And then Bart P12. Liam Kerr in P13. And I believe that was all who finished the race. I believe everyone else was either in the pit lane or DNF'd, so...
Yeah, not a huge amount made it through to the end, but it is just media day, so you don't have to worry about it too much. No points for this. The real points will start next Monday. Also to mention that the race next week will be an hour earlier than this one. That was just for media purposes, so we can take some lovely screenshots for our social media.
Mm-hmm. Make sure you follow that, by the way.
Absolutely, we're on Instagram.
Get yourself involved if you haven't already.
Yeah, Instagram is our main place right now. Get some great pictures on there, and obviously you can also join the Discord as well if you want to take part in any of these races.
Yeah, Follow us along on the website as well, Anti-Stall Racing. You know where to find us by now, I'm sure. And if you're new around here and you don't know where to find us, well, welcome in. Lovely to have you. Hopefully you'll join us on the grid for next season as well. That'll be exciting. We have still a couple more spaces, I believe.
Yeah, we still got spaces.
Not sure in what series.
Still got spaces in IndyCar. I believe we've got a couple of LMP2 spaces in our IMSA series as well. And we've got plenty of slots open in touring cars. But yeah, absolutely fantastic race there. I think because it's media day, we are gonna call it. So we can get editing all the lovely screenshots and photographs that we have taken during this time. But I would like to thank everybody that has been watching. I'd like to thank all the racers that have been racing. And yeah, really looking forward to this season. So hopefully next week we'll be back again. And it'll be even better than this.
Yeah, absolutely. But as always, pleasure to be with you, Gerard. And hey, let's get racing.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.